guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're well and having a fantastic day. Well, good morning to you. It is Saturday morning here in Australia and I have this beautiful quilt as you go quilt just for you. Now this quilt was comprised as a quilt as you go in rows, and the sweet thing about this quilt is that it is made of stars. However, I'm sure you would have seen my short video how I actually started this, and it started from squares, guys. So this has come together really easy and quick. It is the fastest quilt as you go you would ever made. So let's get right into this video and I'll show you how I actually made it. Now before I go, there is a pattern for you to download. Now buying the pattern does support the channel, so if you're happy to do so, I'm very pleased that you support the channel in that way. And if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Karen and my channel is called Crafty Quilting Designs, and I really enjoy making quilts. And I do have some free patterns there on my websites for if you want to enjoy. Just go download it, find videos, or just go straight to the website. A link will be down there and then you can simply just get all of the free patterns. Now saying that, please do follow me on Instagram. I'm really trying to grow my channel over there, and I tend to post a lot of stuff that I haven't really yet posted on YouTube, so check that out to see updates. Now let's get into this easy breezy quilt as you go, starting from squares to stars. Let me know what you think about it in the description box down below. I'm looking forward to see your reply. Bye for now. Happy quilting. Love you. Okay guys, so today's quilt is going to be a quilt as you go, all right? And we're going to be using lights and darks. Now for my lights and darks, I am using a background for white for my background fabric, and I'm going to be using some variables in terms of lights and mediums. So I'm just going to be using purple, however it's going to be light purple and medium, and this one here is dark. Okay, now all of these have been cut from yardage. Okay, and again there'll be a pattern so that you'll have all the sizes. Okay, so it's easier to do the video without mentioning the sizes, just so that I don't have to make the video any longer or to remember exactly where I am, rather than just show you how to make the block. So we're going to be making half square triangles with each of these, and I'll tell you again how much blocks you need. So to make your half square triangle, you need your background fabric, and I'm going to be mixing my lights and darks and mediums and darks together. So this one is going to be mediums and darks, so I'm just simply going to draw a line from point to point, okay, on both of them, just to make sure that you understand. So I have one of my medium squares here with my background and one of my darks here with background. Okay, as you know, this quilt is called from squares to stars. So as I said, draw a line, okay, from point to point diagonally. Now after you've done that, you need to sew on each of that line. So hopefully you can make it out there. I've literally sewn on either side. Now I have used a pen just to draw the line so that I can see it. Ideally I probably should have used a colored thread so that you can see, but I think most of you would know how to make half square triangle by now. So all I'm simply going to do at this point is to cut in between. So I've chain pieced this, as you can tell, and I'm going to cut them apart, and I'm simply going to separate these two here so that you would have 4 half square triangles in total. Now if you do follow my channel, you would have seen that I did do a very short video called the shorts for this particular part. Okay, now once you've done that, you're going to lay your background color down and flip it back, and you're going to press it back. The reason why I'm doing that is so that my dark color becomes on the dark itself, not on the light, because if I put it forward, it's going to show up. If I bring it towards the dark side, it's going to remain on that side. I'm just going to finger press it. Now if you have a roller seam, you can of course use that, but at this stage it's not too important. Again, down and flip back, and I'm going to open up all of them. Okay, now at this stage we are simply going to measure out the block, and so we're going to trim the blocks down to size. And again, the the pattern will tell you exactly how much you need to do that. So at this stage you would need your squaring up ruler, which I have somewhere here. Okay, and you're going to square it up to a particular size. And again, if you've never squared up before, you simply need to line up the angle or the point of which you need to straighten up. And I'll do one as a demonstration very quickly. Now what you need to do is line up your diagonal line with your diagonal stitch line here on the angle or the number that you wish to square up. Or if your square is bigger, then you allow that area of where you need to be measured within the frame of the square. All right, but as I said, all the details will be in the pattern. Now, if you've cut accurately, ideally, you should only be able to trim one size, or one side, I should say, just to make sure I make that clear. All right, so mine has been cut correctly. I'm just going to take off the dog ears on that side. And that's simply it squared up. All right, so once you've done that, what you're simply going to do, so I'm not going to square up the other three, I am just simply going to show you the layout now. So you're going to lay them out like so, and I'm going to put the dark one in. Now there is no right or wrong, because remember I am using here the darks and lights together. On the next block I am going to be using darks and medium, so I've alternated that throughout the entire quilt top. Alright, so now that I have trimmed all of them, the layout here is quite simplistic. It is not difficult at all. So as I said before, I'm going to choose the option of having my darks towards the end, and I'm going to add my mediums towards the middle. Okay, so like so. So you really need to have all of them together like this, and at this stage you're simply going to sew your blocks together. So you're looking for that diamond in the square or an hourglass, however you want to look at it. It doesn't really matter as long as it makes that particular pattern. All right, so you're going to fold it together, front sides together, and you're going to sew along there and sew along there. Okay, once you've done that and you've sewn them both together, you are simply now going to bring it front sides together and sew along there. Okay, once you've done that, it should look like this. So this is a completely different one, as you can see. So with this one here, I've opted now to put my lights in the middle and my mediums towards the end. Now to change the square now into a star, we need to make several few cuts. Okay, so I've chosen now another board. Now if you have a rotating board, ideally you can use it. If you haven't, by all means, a board where you can move about quite easily will be optional. So all I'm going to do now is take my long ruler. Now what I want to say that's very important here, you need to make sure that this seam line here is nice and straight. If it's a bit offset, you may have a little bit of a wonky block. Okay, so I'm going to put the middle of the ruler because I want a particular size on either side. So I'm going to line it up in the middle, and I'm going to make sure that my ruler is right in the middle of the seam line that goes from top to bottom there. Okay, and once I am happy with where it's at, I am simply going to add a cut there. Okay, now you'll see why I chosen to get a board that I can actually move is so that I don't want to touch the block itself. I just simply want to be able to move the board to make this. It's a very easier way, or simplified I should say, of making a star block. Okay, now we're going to move things around. So first of all, I'm going to move this end one here, and I'm going to, like, there's a little bit of a dog ears just sticking out there. I'm just going to trim that off. I trim it off only because when I'm sewing, it's a lot more flatter. So again, I'm going to move a little bit sticking out there. Now, what you can do if you find that you've got a little bit of an unevenness there, what I tend to do is just take my ruler and go back in and just simply make sure that's lovely and even. That's all I'm doing, to just trim off that bit that's just sticking out so it's even. Okay, you don't have to, but I chose to. So again, I'm turning it upside down, and that's all I'm going to do. Just keep turning each of the cuts on the end. I haven't touched the middle block. Okay, so I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to turn the outside ones now. I'm just turning them the other way, and hopefully you can see the star appearing nicely. And that is simply a block. That is it. Literally very quick. Hence the reason why I'm calling it a 5-minute block. It literally does take 5 minutes. And we're going to sew together as per normal. So we're going to sew like so, like so. And again, I chain piece all of them like so. And then I'm going to start again, so each side. All right, so obviously once I've done that, I will then have it all sewn together like so. And just like we've done before with the first stage of this block, we then need to just flip front sides together and sew. So once you've done that, the block is going to look like this. So that is the completed block there, all sewn together. All right, so I'm going to show you the layout now, and then we will play around a little bit and see what other patterns we get within the whole layout. But very quick and very easy. What I would say though, when you come to iron the block, you need to iron at this stage, so you can do a little bit of steam, make sure it's nice and flat. But I have actually ironed from the back first, then I've turned it over, and then I've completed it. All right, okay, so let's go to the layout now. Alright guys, so I've laid the blocks out. Now I've put the darkest block in the middle, as you can tell, and all the other blocks around it. So I'm going to compile this quilt as a quilt as you go, and I'm going to do it in rows. So we're going to move on to that stage now. Alright guys, so we're going to do the quilt as you go in rows now. Alright, okay, so I usually piece the whole thing and then I put it onto the batting. Okay, so those of you who are new to my channel, when I make a quilt as you go, I do not like piecing it onto the batting individually. So i.e. I do not like making my blocks with the batting as I go, because I think it's a more long-winded process. Okay, however, what I tend to do is make the blocks as normal, sew them into a row, and then I add that row to the batting. Hence the reason why I call it quilt as you go in rows. So this is the stage where we're at. If you are deciding not to add, and this applies to any quilt, okay, now one of the reasons I actually came up with this idea is because when we were traveling, the throat space, and for those of you who are not sure what the throat space is, that's that little arch area underneath the machine where you put your hands to actually sew next to the needle. So that's called the throat space. So when we were traveling around Australia in the caravan, I did not have my huge sewing machine. And so it was quite difficult to quilt when I needed to quilt. All right, yes, piecing and sewing is fine, but having to put a medium quilt, a small quilt, a large quilt underneath a throat space of say 3.5, 4 inches tops is quite difficult for those of you who've ever done it. So what I decided to do was to came up with this idea of quilting it in rows, and this has actually helped. It is quite a lot more effective, easier way of quilting your quilts or quilting a large quilt under a sewing machine. All right, so what we're going to do now is add on the actual border. Now, what I have done is leave space at the top and at each of the sides just for that purpose. Now, the piece of batting I have here is only for the actual first row. So this is the first row. I always start with the first row. Why? Because then I need to be able to measure the border. Now, if you're not going to add a border, then you don't have to worry about that. You can just piece it onto the batting, and then that's the end of that. Once I have added my border, so I will sew my border on just as you would for any conventional quilt. Now, what makes it so much more easier is because you're doing things in pieces. You're literally adding on as you go. So I will add this border onto my actual row here, all right? And then I will then baste it onto my batting. So in a sense, my quilt as you go is going to incorporate the backing fabric and the top the border, top, and the row. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So what I am going to do now is sew these two together. Then I'm going to come back, baste it onto here, and I'm going to cut it at the bottom here. You're wondering, why am I cutting it? Well, I do not need all of this batting here. Remember, this is quilt as you go in rows. So I am just going to cut it probably about an inch away from the edge of the row of blocks that I have here at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back and show you exactly what I've done for this first row. All right, so I'm in the process of currently basting. So I have cut the row to the same length as the batting, all right? And as you can see, the top border is on and the side is on to the length of the row of the top. Now, as I said, I'm currently basting, so I'm just dividing this in half. I've done this side on the right, and I'm just going to do this side on the left, and all I'm simply going to do is fold it back and do the basting as I would normally. Now, one of the pluses of actually doing my quilt as you go in this technique, it really helps with the basting. You don't have to worry about having a really large piece of the quilt to baste, and then you're getting it all tangled up and it's all messy and it's not coming out right. With this technique, it's definitely a win-win, because you can quilt in a small quantity, i.e. getting it all under your throat space, as well as baste it. And it's a lot more quicker. You don't have to be bending over and stretching. It's very simplified, and it has worked on many occasions. All right. Now, we're going to do the back now, and the same applies. You are going to cut the back of your fabric, so your back fabric, the same width and length as your rows. That is it. And then we are going to quilt it. So this will be my first row that I'm going to quilt, and it will fit underneath my throat space. Yes, I do not need to do this now because my throat space for my quilter's choice is quite big. Nevertheless, this is to help anyone out there who have problems quilting a large quilt under your sewing machine. All right, so as I said, I'm simply going to add the back now, and then the next time you see me will be just quilting, and then I will show you how to join the rows. Now, before I move forward, your bottom row is going to look the same as your top row. I hope that would make sense to you, because obviously you will have the bottom for the top border and your sides as normal. Now, for the middle of the quilt, the middle row, all it will have is just a side piece, isn't it? So therefore, when we join them together, We will then line up the rows as well as the borders and the sides, okay? But I'll definitely demonstrate the first joining to you, which will be the top row and the middle row. And hopefully you wouldn't need to see the last row because the same technique will apply. So I'm going to base this now at the back and quilt it. Alright guys, so billet quilting now, so you can see what actually happens. So you're just looking at the back here and of course the front, and this is just the top row as I mentioned before. Alright guys, so what I have done here is quilted all the 3 pieces. So this is the top or the bottom, however you want to look at it, because it's going to be the same, isn't it? Alright, and this is my middle row here. Now what I'm currently doing is trimming back, and I'm going to show you on this edge here. I'm trimming back trimming away the batting and the excess back fabric, okay, to the edge of the block. What I have done for the first row is to just trim away, and I'll just use my scissors for this, just trim away in fact no, I haven't trimmed anything away as yet. I'm just looking at it and realize this is the other one I've done it too. So what I have done is just quilted and left it as is. So what I'm going to do with this one now is to simply take away the batting. I am not taking away the backing fabric because I need that excess to hide or to fold over to join, and I'll demonstrate that as well. But for now, once I have done cutting this off here, which I'll do right now so that you can see how it's done. So all you simply need to do is to take your ruler, line it up to the edge of the blocks and put a firm hold on it, and you simply just cut away the batting and yeah, this is the excess here, just to make sure that's very clear. You're cutting away the excess. You're just lining it all up nice and straight. Okay, and to do the sides also, so I'm just going to lay down that. Again, line up the ruler to the edge of, in this case, not the block, but the border, the side border, and just simply trim away. Okay, so you should have a piece that looks like this. So I know it's the middle because my darker block is in the middle, and there is no excess batting or backing fabric on it. All right, so for the top piece now, just put that to the side and get my ruler, my scissors. So all we're going to do basically, as I said, is to just simply remove, and I'm only referring to the edge here where the layers or the rows are going to be joined. So all I'm simply going to do is to gently cut away the batting, and I am cutting it as close to the block as possible. Okay, so to the edge of the block, I'm just cutting it away. So again, do not cut the batting, all right? So just take your time, and I'm just holding the scissors at an angle and simply just cutting. Just take your time, there's no rush to do this. And I'm really just using the tip of my scissors and cutting it through. Alright, so I'm going to continue doing that, and then I'll show you the next stages. Okay guys, so we're going to now join the rows together. So I've trimmed off the excess batting on the edge here, and all you can see is the backing fabric. All right, now for this one you're going to need some pins, which I have a few on my table here, and I'm going to join the top row to the middle row. Okay, as you can see, it lines up perfectly on the camera, Now, for those of you who are wondering, well, why did I leave this excess here? I've left this here so that I can fold it over. The technique is, once that you've lined up the rows front sides together like so, and this is the reason why you need your pins, okay? You're going to line up the edge of the batting, sorry, my apologies, the edge of the border, all right? And you're going to make sure that all of the seam lines from the top here or the bottom, whatever one you're working with, and the middle lines up. So every intersection, so to speak, lines up. And that is where you start using your pin. So first of all here, I'm lining up the edge of both the borders, and I'll come in closer and show you once I've pinned them, okay, together. And again, I'm just looking, and it really should fall into place quite easily. As long as your original cuts for your blocks was accurate, all right? That's, this pin is blunt. All right, I'm gonna throw that in the bin. Okay, so as long as it's accurate, this one too. All right, the whole thing needs to go in the bin. It's gonna frustrate me. Right, so let's try this again. And just line up as I said. So as long as your blocks initially was cut accurately and you squared it up accurately, everything should line up without any issues. And I can see it already. I don't even have to look. As I fold it back, I can see it's lined up nicely. So again, there, pin that. I'm just going to try and take bigger intersections rather than smaller ones. That lines up nicely there. No issues at all. All right. And for those of you, because I have done this before on other quilts, and I remember seeing a comment about something about what it, you know, if the, why would I do my quilt as you go in this technique? Because it shrinks the batting, and the whole quilt itself shrinks, you know, doesn't this cause a problem? Well, I've never had that issue. Yes, it does shrink, would not lie about that, because it's quite visual. You're adding all of these stitches into it. It is going to tense the fabric out. However, there is still some give in, and you can see that's lined up perfectly there. Let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see that a lot better. And I just kicked the camera. Just going a little bit closer because I want you to understand exactly what I'm talking about. No, I didn't have to do anything special to do that. You know, it was just lined up properly because my blocks were measured accurately. And as you can see, there is no shrinkage on the quilting of the quilt. All right. So what I was saying though, however, if that does happen to you, because there is a little bit of a give, when you quilt it, as it is not just dense, because I don't use quilting techniques or methods that allows it to be so dense that it shrinks. And when I say dense, what I'm meaning is a lot of quilting on the quilt. This one is just meander. So what it does give it a bit of a free flow, i.e. there is some give in the fabric, or in this case the quilt, so that you can just, if you think that is slightly out of line, you can give it a little tug. And I say a little, I'm not talking about stretch the thing out of shape. You know, just pull it into shape as you would when you're lining up a block. If you find that something is a little bit, you will give the fabric a little bit of a tug just to make sure it is lined up properly. All right, and I'm simply going to pin. Now, my next stage now, my next step is to go back onto my sewing machine. I'm going to add a stitch line all the way there. And again, it's going to be a 1/4 inch stitch line because I know that's what I use for quilting. So I'm just going to allow it to be stitched there. Now, what I would say to you is that whatever color thread you are using at the back or at the front, you need to make sure it lines up properly, because if I use another color thread, it's going to show up. So Or if you don't want to see that straight stitch line there, because it will come out on this side, then use a thread that is the color of your backing fabric. All right, so in this case, my color here will be pink, okay, a pale pink. I have used a bright pink for the quilting. However, if I'm saying to you I don't want to show that straight stitch line that's going to be there once I sew this together, I can then use a color thread that's just going to fall into the background and would not be visible. All right, so that could be white, that could be a very light pink, and that will solve that problem. But if you don't care whether or not that line shows up, by all means go ahead and add whatever color thread you like. Once you've done that, the next stage is to simply just fold. Now you're wondering if what length this is. This is probably approximately about 1 inch or less in width. Okay, now why do I give you such of an measured response? It doesn't really matter. The important thing here is that you're able to fold it twice. I'm just pulling the pin back so I don't pierce myself. You're able to fold it twice to hide that raw edge. That's the objective here. Okay, so in a sense you are putting a sort of a binding method behind the quilt so that once you open it flat, you don't see the raw edge here. Hence the reason why I give you such of a unmeasured, accurate, you need a definitely 1 inch, you don't necessarily, as long as you have enough to fold it twice. And I usually will not have a big bulk there because I want to be able so that it fits nicely and just simply cover it. That is the objective here. So I'm going to sew this together and then I'll come back and show you the whole technique moving on. All right, so it's been joined together now, and as you can see, I've ironed it so it's nice and flat. You don't have to iron it, but I do find that if you do give it a nice little press and open up that seam, it makes it a little bit more easier. All right, it just kind of softens the batting. Now the next thing to do is to fold it over. As you can see, I've started here, so I'm just going to fold it over twice as I've done, pin all the way down and sew. Again, just as a reminder to use your your thread that is the same color of your backing fabric. All right, so in this case I'm going to use a light pink, and I'm going to make sure that I have the same color as the top thread for the back here. So it's looking good so far, lines up really nicely. You could add 2 stitch line at the top, so your first stitch is going to hold it down right at the top here, and the second stitch, if you want, you can put another one along there, which I tend to do, but I will show that to you at the end. So once I've joined those 3 layers together, what I am going to do next is just simply add my binding, and I'll show you the completed quilt. Alright guys, so the quilt is now completed. So this is what it looks like at the front. Doesn't it look absolutely beautiful? This quilt measures 50 inches squared, and as you know, it is a quilt as you go in rows. Now tell me what you think about the quilt pattern and how we actually made it in the description box down below. So looking at it from a distance, looks really lovely. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer so you can actually see the quilting. Okay, and as you can see, it is just simply meandering all over. Absolutely beautiful, guys. It's a really easy structured quilt in rows for a quilt as you go, and it finishes very, very quickly. I will turn it around so that you know what it looks like on the back in a minute. But checking this out, doesn't it look really lovely? I do love the idea of turning the squares into the stars so quick and easy, and I think there's more patterns and layouts from that one, so you can obviously play around with it. But what do you think of the quilt, guys? What do you really think of it? Absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? Really beautiful. Now this is probably about the 5th quilt as you go in rows that I have made on my channel. So what I'll do, I'll put a link in the description box down below, or the videos at the end, for more quilt as you go technique. So I'm going to turn it over so you can see what it looks like on the back, and you can see all of the actual quilt patterns, the quilting on it as well. Now that was a terrible throw, wasn't it? Let's try that again. Hopefully I get it better. Much better now. All right, so you can see, sorry for my squeaky chair, you can see all those two lines there where it's actually joined. And again, if I zoom in for you, you should be able to see the quilting pattern. It looks really nice. Now what I would say is that if you don't want to see the lines where it's joined, really all you need to do is use a print fabric at the back, and that will seamlessly disappear into the print. But obviously mine is just little hearts, I think it's flowers on pink fabric, so it is going to show up those joining lines. But overall, very simplistic process. I use a blue binding again to bring the whole thing together, but it looks really nice, guys. I'm really pleased with the outcome. And again, this is just to show people who do not know that you can make a quilt as you go, literally in rows, you know, so that if you've got a small throat space that you're working with, you can still make a quilt. You can make a huge quilt, and one of my videos I've done in the past is for a queen size quilt, and again I would link that for you. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Certainly leave a comment below and what you think of the technique, and I look forward to hearing from you. Also tell me what you think about the technique from the squares to the stars. But overall, I love the quilt. I think it's really beautiful, really nice, and as I said, was constructed very easily. So bye for now. Happy quilting. Love you guys, and I'll definitely see you in the next one. Bye for now, guys. Happy quilting.